Is it all clear? All right.
Yeah, we see the
okay.
rules.
Yeah. So this is the first part, two parts of the paper. This is the first part, and it was there to sort of investigate the nutrition in the food and to see whether using the GANs would have any effects on nutritional values in food. So I will just read through this as a bit of an introduction, where modern agriculture conjures up a lot of debate around different farming practices. You know, does one till the land or not till the land? Do you only surface till the land? And then there's the growing organically versus conventional chemical farming, farming using biodynamic principles or permaculture, growing food in soil versus growing food in water or hydroponics. So these are all the debates which are happening around the world today. And each one has its own supporters and naysayers as to which one works better than the other one. But I think we can all get lost in this debate because I believe we have lost sight of one of the main principles of farming, and that is to grow and provide the most nutritious food irrespective of how it is grown. When you go to your local grocer and you see the beautiful array of fresh tomatoes or different vegetables, how do you know which one gives us the most nutrition? You know, what nutrients are we getting when we purchase a particular tomato? Because we don't see a list of nutrients on our tomatoes or carrots, so we're not sure what we're buying. But when we buy any other food or box of food from the store, it lists its ingredients and nutritional values. So why are we not doing the same for our freshly grown produce? You know, the link between food and nutrition and our health is well established and an obvious connection. And we're told by nutritionists and doctors that we must eat a healthy diet, including fruits and vegetables. And they're correct, but how much of the fruits and vegetables do you need to eat every day to ensure that your body is receiving enough nutrition? If my food is so depleted of the vitamins and minerals, do I have to eat 3 times as much just to keep me healthy? And has the nutrition of our food declined so much that this becomes a contributing factor to the poor state of our health? So the objective of this experiment was to determine if we can increase the nutritional value of plant using GANs, plasma solution. Following this report details the methods that we used in soaking of the seeds in the GANs and then allowing them to grow and then conducting different nutritional tests on the plants. So I'll go through the method used. We used Daikon radish seeds, and we used 2 batches for our report, testing. The first batch of seeds we soaked in the GANs, and these will refer to the plasma radish. The second batch, we only soaked those seeds in plain distilled water, and then these will be referred to as the plain radish. So both batches of radish plants were watered with our standard nutrient solution, which contains the following minerals. So it's sort of a typical formulation for sort of hydroponic growing. So there was calcium, nitrogen, iron, potassium, magnesium, sulfur. So that was in our solution, which we water our plants with. Now, the development of the plasma science and technology, and especially in the GANs, has its benefits on both plants and animals, and it's the leading edge of science today. So with this report, we can't go into the depths of all the different background technologies of this. So you obviously know the different websites that one can go to. All right, so what we did with our seeds is we measured out 35 grams of Daikon radish seed. We then took 1 ml of the GANs solution and we put that into 500 ml of distilled water. And then we poured this water, see in figure 5 there, poured this water into the the radish in the container which had the radish seeds. And then we placed this container on a warm heating mat, covered it up with another lid and put a blanket over it. And we left it there for 24 hours on sort of a low temperature to help with the germination. This photograph shows you the seeds after the 24-hour period soaking in that water with the GANs. What we then do is we then just drain off that water, and we then spread the seeds out onto a bed of cocoa fiber. Now the cocoa fiber contains no nutritional value at all, so we just put it in one of our trays, spread out 35 grams of seed there evenly across the entire tray. Then that's the picture of once we had allowed the seeds to germinate. That was the early days. And there's just side views of the radish as it was germinating. Now, during the germination stage, we didn't add any further water. And once they'd reached the stage of about an inch, then we start watering. And what we had done was we watered sort of twice a day. And every time we use 40 mils of our nutrient mix. But then on 4 occasions, we used an additional 2 mils of the GANs that we added to the water, and we watered the radish with that as well. So we used very small amounts of the GANs when you look at the overall amount that we used with when you diluted it with the water. There's the picture of the radish that has grown after 8 days. There's just 2 further side views and a close-up view of the radish after 8 days of growth. The following pictures just show you the root growth that is achieved. And this is something that we're always amazed at is the incredible root growth that we always see when we're using the GANs on any of the growing of different plants. There's a side view of the root growth as well. What we then did is I washed the plants to get rid of all the cocoa fiber. And so we did this about 10 times, each time refreshing with clean water to get rid of all the cocoa fiber, because I was washing the plants with the roots. So we didn't cut them as before. And then we just placed them in a spinner, a big automatic spinner to get rid of the water. We did this 2 times so that we just get all the excess water off the plants. So there, the picture at the top is what we're left with, is the Daikon radish with all the clean roots. And when we measured that mass from the tray, it was 424 grams from our 35 grams of seed. We then did just a couple of measurements of the plants, just with the total root length. So there were various sizes of growth. There was nothing really on a consistent basis there. So that's what we had done. So we had then sent off 200 grams of the plant mass off to a laboratory at the Southern Cross University here in Australia for plant tissue analysis. And then we had kept some more of the plant, which we're going to use in the Pfeiffer circular chromatography test, which we'll explain next week on those results. And then the balance of the radish we just put in the fridge just to evaluate the shelf life again. Now, so that was with the seeds with the GAN solution. Now we did the same procedure again with the radish seeds, but just with, in this case, plain distilled water. So again, we just added the distilled water with the seeds, allowed it to soak overnight for 24 hours. So we followed the same procedure. This again was done a week later. I didn't do this consecutively, well, the same day, because I wanted to make sure that we weren't exposing, trying to eliminate the effects of growing in a GANS environment. So the first batch was done 1 week and the second batch was done the following week. And here are the pictures again of the radish after 8 days of growth. Again, the root mass also showed very good growth. And then again, we washed the plants to remove all the cocoa fiber, and then we weighed these plants. Now this batch for the 35 grams gave us 476 grams of plant mass. So that's slightly more than the plasma radish, 46 grams more. But because we had grown it over 2 consecutive weeks, we were coming into our change of weather here. And so we have noticed over many years of growing that any slight change in the weather does impact our overall weight that we get every week from our radish. So those conditions do affect it. And then we measured the roots of these plants. And then again, we sent off 200 grams of the root of the plant to be analyzed. And we kept 50 grams for chromatography test, and then the balance was put in the fridge. So those are the 2 batches that we'd worked with. Now, as I said, we'd done separate grain periods, 1 week apart, so that I could at least control and finish what the growing of one batch, and then we started on the next batch. Our previous experiments had shown that when we use the GANS, the field effect of using the GANS is quite large. And so if we had to sort of try and overcome the field effect of using the GANS, we would have had to sort of grow on either another farm or at least 50 meters away. So I knew that by growing these radish plants within our environment, they would be exposed by the GANS fields that we had used on all our other plants and on the farm, because there's bottles of GANS everywhere. So I wanted to see whether by not soaking the seeds, we could still achieve some effect on with the field environment of the GANS. And this test results don't show that, but on the chromatography test we'll show next week, you definitely see an impact on the field effect. So the samples were sent off to the laboratory, and these are the results that we got back. Now, the testing that was sent for, we'd gotten results back on the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, carbon, calcium, magnesium, sodium, and then some of the elements of copper, zinc, manganese, iron, boron, molybdenum, cobalt, and silicon. Now, I've created a few tables of these just so that we can show for comparison. It's a lot easier to read. So there's some bar graphs. So what we've done is the blue bars is the plasma radish, and the red bars is the plain radish. So we can see when we look at nitrogen, almost identical. The phosphorus was, the plasma radish was 1.5%, and the plain radish was 0.99%. Potassium was the only one that stands out, where the plain radish had a higher value of 5% versus the plasma radish of 3%. Sulfur was identical. Calcium, we'd seen quite an increase of 1.2 versus 0.64. Magnesium was a lot higher at 0.81 versus 0.47. And then the sodium was also higher on the plain one versus the plasma radish. So those are those elements. I'd separated out carbon because it just distorted the bar graph. So there's the carbon for the plasma was 44.4% versus the plain radish seed of 39.6%. And these are the rest of the elements that were analyzed. So we can see, again, the blue is the plasma and the red is the plain radish. Now this shows milligrams of copper per 100 grams. And there we have 43 of plasma versus 16 of the plain radish. Zinc is 85 versus 50. Your manganese is 73 versus 49. Boron was 25-30. Molybdenum was very much the same of 1 and 0.9. And then cobalt, again higher at 0.6 versus 0.2. These are the iron results, iron and silicon. So the blue is the plasma, red is the plain. We have 310 versus 198 on iron, and 523 versus 460 for the silicon. So what I've done is I've just done a summary here on the results, so it's a lot easier to read. So all the ones I've done, the plasma radish, plain radish, and then whether there's a percentage increase or decrease. And the green is where the plasma radish is higher value than the plain radish. And then the red is where we've seen a decrease. So when you look at that overall, we've seen an increase in the sort of elements within the plant, the plasma radish, compared to the plasma radish, plain radish. And these are ranging from sort of 10 to 62% increase in the different mineral components of the plasma radish compared to the plain radish. So overall, we can see that using the GANs, we certainly are increasing the plant's nutritional potential. And as we had used a nutrient solution on both batches of radish, this already gave them a good base of nutrient which was available for them. But using the GANs, it had shown a marked increase in the mineral values of the plasma radish. Okay, so now we looked at the comparison and evaluation of the plant growth, just the overall visual appearance between the two. On the left, we have the radish grown with the GANs, and on the right, the radish with no GANs. So visually, we don't see any sort of difference. In this case, the plain radish looked a little bit taller, as I said, because of the different growing conditions from one week to the next. But on the surface of it, they always look the same. The root growth was also very good on both of them, comparing the root growth. Really no difference between the two. There's the bottom view and side view. Now, these experiments were done in our autumn period, so these are ideal grain conditions for our climate. And over many years, our experience has shown that during the heat of the summer and then during our cold winter months, we've experienced poor germination of our seeds in the past. But since we started soaking the seeds in the GANs, we've had a very high germination rate, even during our very hot summers and winter months. And we always achieve the spectacular root growth during these periods as well. So, as I said before, we've always seen really consistent root growth in all of our plants that we grow when we use the GANs. The shelf life, there we just put some of the rest of the radish plants into the fridge. Now the shelf life is basically how long your produce will last in the fridge from the time that you've harvested it. Now this is critical for both farmers and the shopkeepers to have produce that lasts as long as possible. Now, prior to using the GANs, when we were growing our radish, we only really achieved around 14 to 16 days from time of harvest to when the produce had turned yellow and was unusable. And our previous experiments a few years ago showed that we had increased the shelf life to a minimum of 3 times. So we were getting up to 45 days where the plant was still looking very good. And in that particular experiment, the radish lasted 180 days in our fridge before it had turned to sort of a bit of a yellow mush at the bottom. Now, these sets of photos show this is the radish, the plasma radish, after 26 days in the fridge. So this was the 12th of May. So this had already been sitting in the fridge for nearly 4 weeks. And it still looks very, very good. This was the plain radish after 19 days. There's certainly a difference, a lot more yellowing of the plants when we compare to the plasma radish there at 26 days. So again, it's showing the increase in shelf life of the plants using the GANs. These were additional photos that we took. So this photo at the top there was 34 days in the fridge up until the 20th of May. And the bottom one was 27 days in the fridge. And there you can see it's now become quite unusable. And that was the plain radish at the bottom. So there, 34 days in the fridge for plasma radish that is still looking very, very good to eat. So it shows again the benefits of using the GANs. Now, as we've said, for the past couple of years, we've seen this extended shelf life that the plasma radish exhibits. And we've seen now that with our test results, we've seen that using the GANs and soaking the seeds with the GANs, we've increased the nutritional, the mineral content of the plants, so we've increased the nutritional value. But one has to ask the question now, is the increase in nutritional value solely a benefit of an extension of the shelf life? And through the understanding of the plasma science, all living beings, including the plants, are all made of GANs. And each plant type will have its own magnetical gravitational field strength, which is made up of trillions of cells. These are GANs with their own field strength. And the combination of all these plasmas gives us the overall magnetic gravitational field strength of the plant. Now, the addition of the GANs then allows the plants on an individual plasma level to increase their magnetic gravitational field strength. And I think we'll show in next week's presentation the real effects of this increase in the mag-grav strength that we've achieved on these plants. Now, the decomposition of plants, when we look at what plants are not lasting long in the fridge and are decomposing, they occur when the cells lose their field strength to the environment. And the lower the mag-grav strength, the quicker they will decompose, resulting in a shorter shelf life. And the higher the mag-grav strength of your produce, the longer the shelf life. So the GANs is interacting with the plants on a sort of individual plasma level, giving and taking of the fields. And this effect of longer shelf life is really best achieved when the produce is treated with the GANs from the seed stage and throughout its growing period. Now, when we have a look at a bit of the history on nutrition of plants, some historical perspectives here, I had a look around and found some interesting information. And many studies have shown, done comparing the nutritional value of produce grown from 100 years ago to today. Now, this shows the nutritional value of a simple apple, over 78 years. So in 1914, when they did the analysis of the apple, the calcium was 13.5 grams and phosphor, iron, and potassium, magnesium. Now, they did the same test in 63, 92, and 1992. And as you can see, the decline in calcium was 48%, phosphor 84%, iron 96%, potassium was only 1, magnesium was 82%. So over time, we've seen a steady decline in the nutritional value of just a simple apple. Another way to show this data was how many apples I would have to eat in 1992 to get the same nutrition as one apple in 1914. So for calcium, I would have had to eat 2 apples in 1992. For phosphor, 6. For iron, 25 apples. Potassium, 1. And magnesium, 6 apples. So this just illustrates the decline in the nutritional value of a simple apple over the last sort of century. And I would love to do the test today to see where we are actually sitting. Another graph that we found was illustrating the decline of nutritional value of a cabbage, a lettuce, tomato, and a spinach as a combination, also between 1914 and 1997. And there we've seen the graph when they looked at they took the average of calcium, magnesium, and iron in those 4 plants, and they totaled around 400 milligrams in 1914. In 97, it totaled 75 milligrams. So we saw a decline of 81% over those 83 years. Then to summarize, so one would have to eat 5 times the amount of cabbage, lettuce, tomatoes, and spinach in 1997 to get the same nutrition that it gave in 1914. The decline in the nutrient value of our food is partly due to the degradation and destruction of our soils over the decades. We've gone from small-scale farming to commercial-sized farming to feed the world's population. Now, the use of fertilizers in the soils is like a drug addict who always needs another fix. And when you start down the road of using fertilizer on the farm, you eventually destroy your soils so that over time you need more and more fertilizers to get the same growth. And most farming today is unsustainable, and food security for many nations is becoming a top priority. As there are many farming methods, so there are many ways to tackle this problem, each one coming from a different perspective. So a holistic approach needs to be taken, one where we can increase the nutritional content of our food, while at the same time we can regenerate our soils. At the same time we can remove toxins from the soils, while creating an environment where the plants, animals, and humans are happy. Now, this may seem far-fetched, but with the development of plasma science and technology for space travel at the Keshe Foundation, we know that all of the above can be done at the same time using the GANS technology. Now, as we've shown over the last century, the nutritional value of our food has really shown a steady decline. It's not the plants that have changed so much, but rather the conditions in which they are growing. And this information of poor growth has unfortunately been passed on to each successive generation of new plants through the seeds. This information as magnetical and gravitational fields has been added to the DNA and RNA of all the seeds. Growing with these seeds today means we're starting then from a much lower base. This implies that the plants have the potential to provide us with very high nutrient values if given the right growing conditions. Now, plants growing in very poor soils and conditions will still grow, albeit looking small, unhealthy, and susceptible to all sorts of pests and diseases. This would be sort of your minimum condition for the plants to sustain itself. And I believe this is what we are facing today in feeding the world's population. Now, plants grown in perfect conditions, not wanting for anything, will grow to their full potential, the best radish or carrot that it can be. And history has shown that the potential of the plants. Now, the results that we've shown of increased minerals in Daikon radish by soaking the seeds in the GANS solution is giving us an indication that we can increase the nutritional content of our crops, allowing the plants to grow to their full potential. By increasing the health of the plant, you're also reducing the prevalence of any pests or diseases. And the same comparison can be made in people. A healthy, fit person will not be susceptible to diseases compared to a very overweight or unhealthy person. Now, in previous trials conducted by Mr. Keshe, the Keshe Foundation, it has been shown that soaking seeds in GANs removes the layers of information of the conditioned environment of the past, and that soaking of wheat seeds brought it back to its original grass. So it must be understood that we are not changing the genetics of the plant to achieve these higher nutritional levels. All we are doing is allowing the plants to grow and thrive under all conditions, and in so doing, the plants will have a higher nutrient level because the potential already existed in the plant. We're just allowing the plant to express its full potential. This application of soaking the seeds with the GANs, obviously the way I've done it is not commercially viable, but I think it can be done if we add the GANs into a seed coating mixture that is currently used. Artificial coating of seeds is used to improve handling and for the delivery of protectants, symbiotic microorganisms and micronutrients, and germinating promoters. So all this has already been done into the seed coating that is of seeds around the world. And I think by adding in the GANs into this mix, we can then easily achieve sort of ease of distribution of the GANs with the seeds, thereby eliminating an additional cost for the farmer to distribute the GANs onto his farm. The addition of micronutrients in the coated mixture with the GANs will allow a better connection to the seed and the plant as a whole. Now, the GANs is added to the soil through the seed coating, thereby aiding in the overall regeneration of the soils and the microbial life in the soils at the same time. And this will have a long-term beneficial impact on the soils and environments, plants and people. It's like for every seed that one puts out there, it's like a little GANs reactor that you are planting in that soil. So if you imagine thousands of acres of seeds with all that GANs there, will create incredible effects. And with that, your whole environment of the farm can be changed with the addition of the GANs. My understanding, it's acceptable. This will be an acceptable method of introducing GANs to commercial farmers who tend to be creatures of habit and don't like to change too much. Further investigations, as we stated before, our plain radish was watered with our reservoir of rainwater, which does have bottles of GANs in the water. The whole area in which we grow has many bottles of GANs and certain plasma devices which we've been playing with over the years. And so the question is how much of this plasmatic environment plays a role will require further investigations. And some of the tests that we've done on the chromatograph show the effects of this, which you will see next week. Now, the health impacts on society. Eating produce that is grown with the GANs of an extended period will have a huge impact on the long-term health, both physical and emotionally, of people. Our experience over the last 3 years in supplying our local area with the food grown with the GANs has shown some interesting behavior patterns. We have built up a dedicated following of clients, and sometimes when we can't supply, the customers get quite upset that they can't get their supply of lettuce, and it's almost like they've become addicted to the benefits of nutritionally and emotionally improved plant produce. Our demands over the winter colder months does not decline as much compared to the period before we started using the GANs. So in conclusion, using the GANs solution increases the plant's nutritional potential, allowing them to physically and emotionally thrive. The emotional benefits of using the GANs for the plants and the humans and those that we eat and cultivate is an additional sort of unquantifiable benefit. The results in these experiments are essentially a snapshot in time of the life of the plant. The figures will change as the radish grows to maturity and throughout the growth stage. Now, the seeds collected from these plants will contain new DNA and RNA information for future generations of plants and potentially increase nutritional benefit even further. The increased shelf life of the plasma radish is confirming previous experiments that we have done. The increased nutritional values can contribute to this effect, but I don't think it accounts for the overall significance of the increase in the shelf life. And this is where the real benefits of using the GAN shows itself. Just by doubling of the shelf life will have a profound benefit for small-scale farmers around the world. Their ability to bring their crops to the market with less waste will have a direct effect on the financial well-being of the farmers and the community as a whole. Nations can grow the same amount of food today, but can feed more people, as there will be less loss of food while getting it to the markets. And if the food contains higher nutritional value, then we end up with a healthier nation. Further testing of this will be done, as this is just one experiment which showed a marked increase in benefits of using the GANs on the seeds. And that is the end. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Learned a lot, and it's extremely nice the way you done things. The experiment with interesting is, what gas did you use for this? Just one?
No, we had a mixture of CO2, zinc, CH3, and sea GANs. The GANs made with the seawater.
Which means everything on this planet God has created.
Yes.
What we noticed over years' experience is, as we say, the horses for courses. Not all the gases apply and give the same effect to the same material. If you change your gases even by the ratio, or if you eliminate part of some gases or add some other gases, you can change the growth of the harvest, or you can reduce it. This time you see the reduction, but you see nutritional value increasing. This is part of the research which we'll see coming up, is that we have to design specific gases for a specific grain or product. And then it's not just because it applies to one, let's say, rice, will apply to every other rice. Tailor making the gases is part of the understanding of the technology, and I think with it will come the nourishment. And what you have shown here in past 3 years, we've seen data which you continuously produce with the experiments. It is very interesting because it confirms a lot of things which we have considered to be happening now. We have it physically there, and we've done some of these tests ourselves in the past year to see what elements has increased, what elements has reduced. In reality, I think if you, in your next trial, change some of the ganses, what you got to do is look at the natural elements in the product, like the level of the zinc, the level of calcium, silica, and the rest of it, and design your ganses to enhance those conditions. The way it is now is more or less randomly. The scientific world is, as we just seen, you shown, shows the level of materials in each product. So now that we become wise to it and random shot can be taken out of it, is okay. An apple has so much calcium, it's got calcium, potassium, blah, blah, blah. And then we use those ganses in that target. We can increase a specific, we want to increase the calcium in a fruit. We want to increase potassium in another one. Now that we have become knowledgeable, now we have to target. And this will show a totally different harvest. But we got to understand there is a phenomena, there is a logic in the world of the creation, especially of the plants, is that there is a certain size a plant can carry so much on its leaf, for example, these radishes, that we do not go through the compromise of one to be less than the others. Protein shows a limitation, but everything else, if you increase magnesium, the plant might show reduction in potassium or calcium. Do we need that reduction? Or we can compromise it. But in general, we see increases in a lot of materials, a lot of elements, but where you see usually reduction in one is part of the housing shared in that plant with another element. So if you see the magnesium with the potassium, if the magnesium goes high, does the potassium go high? But these two work together. So you have to decide. Each plant, each what I call the vertical people, have a capacity size. We might grow them bigger and then they have more of in percentage wise. And these are the things which we need to consider. We have to observe these nutritional values, and as we see, we can target what we want to increase. The level of the materials we want, now that the knowledge has grown, we can go targeting what we want to increase. This is important because in the long run, on this planet, we are looking for using what our ancestors did. Now we say we eat the same apple, you need to eat 3 of it to get this, so 4 of it to get the same as years ago. Now with this technology, we can bring it to that time without any what you call fertilizers or whatever. But is our body ready to take 4 times more calcium now than before? Are the plants responding to man's need?
Mr. Keshe, I noticed something here in relation to that. If you look at the 2 main ones that are decreased, the potassium and the sodium, well, those are the things that people in life are trying to decrease in their diet. We're told to use less sodium and less potassium as the salts, that people use too much of. So perhaps this is a way to reduce those items in the diet just through the produce that we're eating. So it's a benefit in this case to have a reduction is what I'm saying, rather than always going for an increase.
You see, we get a lot of our things through the other plants or other food. The body will find the balance of itself, but are the plants responding to our condition we have created. And then they see the need of the man. You got to realize one of the beautiful things about vertical people is, you know how they stretch out their arms, or the flower that birds can see them, or the, what do you call it, the flies or the bees can see them. They make themselves beautiful to attract. Are they changing in a way that we get attracted to them? And is it what we need? And there is a lot of research needs to be done. But in so many ways, the science of technology of the feeding is changing. In the coming time, I'll announce a lot of new development in respect to agriculture, or what we call feeding of the nations. If we see this is the level of calcium or whatever, is this what happened when you put an orange on and you create the fields of it and then you taste the orange? And do we need to build so many factories and chemicals and pesticides to grow the orange, where we can transfer the energy of the orange in the replication of the fields across the city? This is how we're going to feed you in the space. Why not start it early? Would we see people don't feel like eating because they already received the energy? There are some tests going on which we are observing, we'll announce it in time coming, that can we sort this when we understand this, then we see what is there, become as part of the process of disaster relief, so relief feeding the people. Can we transfer antibiotics this way? Can we transfer energy of growth of the soul of the man? Now we put people in prison because of part of the condition between soul of them and the physicality of soul. Can we get away with imprisonment and reach the level of the soul of the man to the point that you bring the soul to the point that it doesn't do any crime? You don't need to create prisons. Through nutrition, we can bring that point of peacefulness. There are no prisons in the universe. Why man has made it? Why do we do all sorts of things to each other because there is not there? It's the same with a lot of things. Food and understanding of the transfer of the energy of what we consume in the dimension of the energy to the gans is the only answer in the universe or on this planet in the coming time. As they say, the man will spend more time for leisure than ever works because his needs are met. This is part of what we call this new, what we call the research center for the world, what we call excellent scientists, has started. And the aim is to get to that point. The structure which now we are working will bring the elite scientists of the planet to create a condition of peace for the world leaders, that the wars become fast. We can do it, but you have to understand how to interpret these data, how to use it. And as knowledge seekers, a lot of you are scientists. And you can come up, you can see a solution. Why not? And if we can help you to develop it, help you to come in and bring it in, it'll be different. In a coming time, we'll make knowledge, participation in development of the knowledge, a pleasure to be part of, and not to pay to become. We don't need to have universities and to understand the work of the GANs. We need to be educated in the universe of the knowledge of the universe, to understand the work of it. And these are beautiful. These datas, when we see it, understand it, then understand what it does. When you see increase in zinc, what does that do? What do we do with people with a mental condition? We give them more of one or the other. What about the ones who have deformities? The work of the Keshe Foundation in medical application through food, or we call through energy, has to become paramount, and reports like this puts data on the table. And because now we start, these papers will be published in the journal, gradually I send people, says, you want to know research done, is there as the scientist has done. No peer reviewing. And then we look at it. We have to start interpreting data the way, how can we change it? And what do we have with the new knowledge that we can bring it about? Thank you very much, James. This is fantastic. This is a gift for people like me who's looking for new solutions, new ways, and your work has been fantastic. Thank you very much for your contribution in Knowledge Seekers.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions you want to ask from Jim? Silence.
I was wondering if Jim had any ideas why the potassium and sodium would have decreased in the plasma radish samples.
Well, as you said earlier, Rick, the decrease in sodium can be a positive because of, obviously also sodium in plants can be quite high. Too much sodium in the plant can be quite toxic. So, to me, this decrease is possibly a positive. When I look at the boron changes there, again, it's probably, I've said here, I can't remember where, but the boron and carbon are so close together that probably is a bit of an interchange between the boron and carbon. And again, these are just snapshots in time. And if we'd taken the same set of results maybe 2 or 3 days later, we might see quite a difference here again.
And I'm just going to add one thing here because I'm sitting next to Jim. Hi, everybody. It's Lisa. And one also has to remember that we do feed these plants a nutrient formula. And they are made up of certain salts, because that's how hydroponic formulas work. They are a mixture of salts and minerals. And so maybe by using the GANs with the nutrient, it somehow regulated the nutrient to what the plant wanted, possibly.
Or to what the humans wanted, like Mr. Keshe mentioned. Perhaps do you guys have high sodium and potassium levels in your blood that need to be reduced?
Not that I know of, but maybe I must check because, yeah.
Are you using too much salt on your meals?
Maybe try to tell me something.
Interesting, though. I thought that was a great comment that Mr. Keshe made about that the plants may know what we need as humans. And from all that I've read, that's, high sodium is a big problem for many people. That's leads to heart tension and that kind of thing. So perhaps this is the answer. And obviously, as Mr. Keshe pointed out, the zinc, which is up 41%, the magnesium, which is up, it's the same virtually, 42%, calcium and so on, but especially the zinc, which affects emotion and the connection with the brain and so on. So that seems really important. If you're at the same time reducing the heart tension, the hypertension, all that hyper excitedness, but adding in the calmness and peacefulness through the zinc and so on, I think you have an antidote to many of the issues in society now, which are related to those very things. So this is like, this might be prescribed in the near future. Doctors will prescribe, oh, you must have plasma fruits and vegetables are mandatory for you, and make sure you always select the plasma radishes and the plasma potatoes when you select your vegetables next time when you're shopping. So perhaps this is the way to go.
Well, I'm sure just like places around the world, you've got your organic section in the supermarket, and you will have your plasma section with all your produce grown.
I think that is coming up. That's not some. This is on the card. This is in the coming time. What we call the GANS technology farming, the bio and the GANS production. This is something we are talking about in many meetings. The new way of new product. We call the GANS product. It's amazing. A lot of people know about it. I had an extremely interesting meeting today. We were in a meeting and with a lady, and she was talking about her friend has told her about the GANS and this and that. And then she asks the people who were with me, who is this guy? And I said, this is Mr. Keshe. My friend has told me about it. Very normal condition. The technology has spread right across, and she says she knows it because she's somebody who reads about the technology has told her for she had a pain in her ankle, and they said it works. And she says, I want to know more. A lot of people are following, but we have to put the conditions right that people understand to do the right way. And I'm sure, I looked at your data because when we use gases, we always look to increase the harvest. But we see, as you said, we compromise between the quality and the quantity. But there is a way that you can increase both. But you have to find what does the radish needs to grow bigger. In wheat and rice, we have the recipe. We know. Current trials show us clearly. So you have to find what increases the what do you call it, the production, and how much by and why, and what reduce the size, or what do you call it, the weight of the material. These are the things farmers can use themselves and see it. There is a pest control section into the agriculture. We introduce a pest control in a very effective way. It's been tried, and the process is very simple. You can use the what we call the GANS as a pesticide in a very effective way. If it doesn't work, you can design it. You design the process, and it works because I show you. I have no, I cannot go that way. I have to go some other way. Just give me a chance. Can you stop sharing if you don't mind? I show you, because I know Jim had some experience with this pest control with the frogs. And you can create a condition that you don't kill, but you move them on in a very simple way using the understanding of the technology. I'll show you very simple. These are actually done. This is a harvest. If you look at it, this is, you can see the date. It's this year. And then you look at this one. Yeah. Now look at this. The day before, the day after, and look at 21st, totally gone. You can see at the bottom is the KFSSI research, and if you know how to handle it, this is a lost harvest. How farmer is done. You can see 19th of the 3rd. You see 20th and 21st. Total cost in cents. But you have to understand, you can create the same condition in the springtime when you need the flies to come and pollinate. You can increase, there is a problem at the moment. They talk about the bees shortage and the farmers and the rest of it. But you can create a condition that allows bees to grow, to be created, to be there. And these are the practical work which has been done. And you see it in 2 days. Nothing was, and nothing used, no chemicals used, just using the plasma technology. The harvest cleans up. It's the same process, we don't need to kill. And understanding it, how to handle it, you change the environment. But the question is, did they fly to the farm next door? Because you can't find them on the floor, they're not dead. It's very, very interesting how we have to analyze and display these things. These are all done by Keshe Foundation knowledge seekers. These are their farms, they tested. And no harvest lost, no farmer losing income. But we have to learn. This is a beginning of a massive scientific revolution. Massive. It's going to touch us in every aspect: agriculture, health, energy. And can we make a unified system? Earth is a unified system, creates light, energy, shelter, everything we call it. And our knowledge has reached that point. We can do it. It's done. It's just knowing how to apply and what to apply, the way you apply it. It's interesting, even in the massive scale farming, we see huge differences. And these are controlled environments which we are part of the Keshe Foundation involved in. This is, I'll show you because we are part of one structure. This is what you see. Harvest, this is before planting, and you see the difference. You can see, and if you go further, you don't need much to know what's the difference between the harvest. And you don't know, or you can't tell the difference between what we call the rice. This is a rice field. This is a large scale rice growing. If you open up and look at the picture, you see the stems and you see the stems. Plants is producing more and is ahead by weeks. Gradually you save time and energy and material. No fertilizer. If you look at the tip of the vegetation, you can see the difference and look at the strength of it. We can look at the thickness of the stems. But you have to tailor make these things. And then you see the harvest. If the target is harvest increasing or target is quality increasing, we can do all this now. It is the beauty of the new technology. And then you clean the land, as James said. When you look at it, it's totally different. Now we've done enough broad teaching. Now we have to get to a specific and create that condition that specifically we can do. We need the harvest. Which harvest? What is the need of a nation? It's no use growing potatoes where nobody touches potatoes, hardly any. Thank you very much, Jim. This is fantastic.